Chair Lady Hartig, is that what we call you, or director?
Doctor.
What, director or doctor? You're a doctor? Okay, you got director up there, doctor. I'll call you doctor. You earned it, I'll give you the title. How about that?
Yeah.
One time I made the mistake of calling a coach mister, and he reminded me he was coach, so you earned that title and you get it. I do appreciate your constant land acknowledgments that were in the film. I'm wondering, have you ever planned on deeding any of your personal property or property of the Smithsonian to any of these tribes?
I don't believe that's pertinent to the conversation, sir.
Well, I mean, you say that every time you open your meetings, apparently, and I was just curious of that acknowledgement, if that was something you were planning on doing. Should the American History Museum be the site that focuses in on what we have in common, the shared national heritage of great ideals and revolutionary events, or focus on what you deemed the issue of the day, which are race, identity, gender, and sexuality? Ma'am?
Yes, sir. At the National Museum of American History, we strive to create a museum where our visitors will be inspired by the collections, programs, and exhibitions, and they will choose what they each will do to keep our American democracy strong and vibrant. And they'll play that chosen part with passion. That is our hope.
Okay. I do think that most Americans would agree with you on what the most important issues are. How did the museum determine those core issues of the day?
So the Smithsonian and the museum are committed to rigorous, fact-based, museum-quality experiences and to tell the full and rich story of America in a way that enlightens and welcomes every visitor. We use historical evidence, competing perspectives, and acknowledge enduring debates so that visitors can understand how we've wrestled with democracy and citizenship and liberty and national identity. So in our work to document the stories of all Americans throughout time, we really do hope that everyone who comes in can see themselves reflected.
Okay, gender and sexuality are highlighted by your museum. The poster behind me shows an exhibit called Entertainment Nation on display now. Do you think these exhibits behind me are appropriate for children?
So I recognize some of the images from Entertainment Nation and from, I think, some other sources. But let me, I think, tell you what I think is most important.
Ma'am, I mean,
yes.
You have pictures of bondage. You have some overtly sexual things up there. You have transgendered folks. I assume that's what they are. And some, I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. It's still not a fan, I can tell you that. But in another exhibit, a 6-year-old girl asked why she doesn't have male genitalia. Do you really think that content is appropriate for children? I mean, do you think little girls have penises? I mean, let's get to the basics of this. Do you think that's appropriate?
So, sir, I believe the exhibition and project you're referring to is Girlhood, It's Complicated, which was a temporary exhibit in our museum that closed, I believe, in 2020.
Ma'am, I didn't ask you that. I asked you, do you think, is it appropriate?
Yeah. So in that exhibit, sir, with permission of the author, we shared a 13-year-old's diary, which I believe is what you're discussing. And in that diary, they wrote about sleepovers and Latin class and math exams.
Ma'am, do you think that's appropriate? I appreciate this. We're limited on time, ma'am. Do you think that's appropriate? Do you think that is appropriate for a child to see? Yes or no?
I understand your question, sir, but
no, you don't. You're not answering. You're just running on, ma'am, and I appreciate your hospitality, but the reality is you are not answering the questions. You are funded by taxpayers, and the taxpayers would like to know, is that appropriate?
So, sir, Girlhood, It's Complicated was not designed for children. It had a label in the beginning of the exhibition that shared with parents about some of the topics that would be covered. And we do that with exhibitions that we think kind of need that help. So parents then can come and
All right. Well,
look
thank
at
you, ma'am.
objects.
I understand you're not going to answer it. I'm going to run out of time. But given some of your previous comments, including America was founded based on the supremacy of white men, loving America is very complicated. America's 250th anniversary is worth problematizing. Why do you think you should continue leading the National Museum of American History?
It's the honor of my career to serve as the Elizabeth McMillan Director of the National Museum of American
Thank you, ma'am.
History.
We're out of time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, the next, Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the witnesses for attending and to help the committee with its work. I'd like to level set this hearing, though, so I'm going to ask you, as in this discussion about our history, Dr. Hartig, who won the 2020 presidential election? Please, I only have so much time. Is that a tough question?
Good morning, sir. No, it's not a tough question. Joseph R. Biden won the election.
Great.
With electoral
Mr. Gonzalez?
college votes, yeah.
Biden was president from 2021 to 2020.
Who won the election, sir? I'm just trying to test where you're coming from.
Biden won the election.
Excuse me?
Biden won the election.
Okay. Dr. Spalding? Joseph Biden. Thank you. Dr. Blight? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Okay, great. Thank you. So, you're all keenly interested in preserving American history. I heard from all of you that you care about the facts, the evidence, the narrative. You know, as an Irish Catholic from Boston, I was in the 3rd grade when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And the nuns in our school made sure we understood everything about JFK's life. You know, a lot of people don't realize he's the only president to ever receive the Purple Heart because of his heroism in the Solomon Islands during the Second World War. And importantly, he and Jacqueline Kennedy were the principal founders of the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. And much of the drive came from Jacqueline, to be honest with you, but the President and the First Lady raised all the funding for the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. And in his life, you know, and at the end of his life, President Kennedy sacrificed everything for this country. And you know where I'm going with this? The current president came in, having nothing to do with the establishment of that institution, and put his name above John F. Kennedy's on the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. As an Irish Catholic from South Boston, that was stolen valor. That was stolen valor. He had nothing to do with that. And it was distortion of history. To someone who visited that for the first time, they would not know. They would not know the history of that building and the fact that it's the only building in the United States Capitol that honors Kennedy's memory and his legacy. Kennedy sacrificed everything. You know, he inspired me to get into politics. Dr. Blight, let me ask you, is distorting that in that stolen valor, renaming that building, changing the history of that building with no basis for doing so, is that a distortion of our history as well?
Of course it is. Erase it and it will come back. On that day, I was in Mr. Barron's 9th grade civics class when he went to the door to get the information that Kennedy had been shot, and he addressed the class to tell us the president was dead. I will never forget that. Yeah. And what a great museum does, what a good class does, what a historic site does, is it simply inspires a sense of history. Well, the past matters. You could not have been in a schoolroom that day and not had a sense of history. It certainly was part of mine.
Right. Thank you. You know, I understand you know, sometimes political correctness can act as censorship, or it can distort the history and you know, the way we view the world. And I understand that. I understand it. And I understand some of the pushback is about perhaps the censorship that is present in political correctness. But then the facts are the facts. Dear God, you know, the president, you know, continually goes back to 2020 election to say that he won it. And we should stand together and reject that crap. Thank you. I yield back.